I was 22 years old, living alone in Dallas, Texas, and most people thought I had the perfect life. I worked online from my apartment, made decent money, stayed in shape, and looked good enough that strangers constantly stared at me whenever I went out. Sometimes women flirted with me at coffee shops. Sometimes men did too. The difference was that I always ignored the men, or at least I pretended to. The truth was something I had spent years hiding from everyone around me. I liked men. Not just secretly. Deeply. But growing up in a conservative family taught me very early that some truths were safer locked away. So I became good at acting. Good at smiling. Good at pretending I was straight whenever anyone asked about relationships. And honestly, after a while, the lie started feeling normal. Most days I stayed inside my apartment working on my laptop for hours. Video editing, online clients, boring meetings, the same routine every day. Sometimes I'd realize an entire week had passed without touching another person. Dallas was a huge city, but loneliness still found me easily. That Saturday afternoon, I decided to get out of the apartment for once. I drove to the Galleria Mall because I needed clothes and maybe a distraction from my own thoughts. The place was crowded with families, couples, loud teenagers, and music echoing through the giant halls. I remember adjusting my black hoodie and walking past a perfume store when I first saw him. A police officer. Tall. Broad shoulders. Dark hair with a little gray near the sides. Maybe late 30s. His uniform fit him perfectly, and the serious expression on his face somehow made him even hotter. I looked away immediately. But not fast enough. Because when I glanced back a second later, he was already staring directly at me. My stomach tightened. There was something intense about his eyes. Calm but confident. Like he could read people in seconds. I tried to ignore it and kept walking toward a clothing store, but I could feel his gaze following me. It made me nervous in a way I couldn't explain. Inside the store, I grabbed random shirts without even checking sizes. My brain wasn't focused anymore. I kept thinking about the officer outside. Then I heard a voice behind me. "You planning to buy all those?" I turned around so quickly I almost dropped the clothes. It was him. Up close, he looked even better. Taller than I expected too. His badge read Ryan Miller. I forced a nervous laugh. Maybe. Haven't decided yet. He smiled slightly. "You've been holding the same shirt for like 5 minutes." I looked down and realized he was right. Great. Now I looked insane. "I guess I'm distracted," I muttered. "Yeah," he said quietly. I noticed. Something about the way he said it made my chest feel warm. I swallowed hard and looked away first. He leaned casually against a shelf, completely relaxed, like starting conversations with strangers was normal for him. "You from Dallas?" he asked. "Yeah. You live around here?" "A few minutes away." He nodded slowly, studying me in a way that made me incredibly self-conscious. Normally I liked attention. But this felt different. Stronger. Dangerous somehow. Then his eyes moved across my face again, and he said the sentence that completely destroyed my ability to think clearly. "You're seriously beautiful, you know that?" I froze. Nobody had ever said something like that to me so directly before. Especially not another man. Especially not a police officer. For one stupid second, I felt exposed. Like he had somehow seen through every lie I'd spent years building around myself. My heart started pounding. And instead of being honest, I panicked. "Sorry, man," I said quickly. "I'm straight." The words came out automatically. Like a reflex. Ryan didn't react the way I expected. He didn't look embarrassed. Didn't apologize. Didn't back away. He just smirked slightly. Not a mocking smirk. More like he knew something I didn't. "Straight, huh?" he said. "Yeah. MHM. The way he said it made me even more nervous. I crossed my arms defensively. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, he replied calmly. Just hard to believe. I should have walked away immediately. Instead, I stayed there staring at him like an idiot. Ryan glanced down at the shirts in my hands. Blue would look better on you than black. I looked at the blue shirt nearby without thinking. He noticed. That tiny smile appeared on his face again. God, I hated how attractive he was. I should go, I muttered. Probably, he said. But neither of us moved for a second. The tension between us felt strange. Heavy. Like something was happening underneath the conversation that neither of us wanted to say out loud. Finally, I turned and started walking toward the exit. But before I left the store, I heard his voice one more time behind me. See you around, Ethan. I stopped instantly. I had never told him my name. Slowly, I looked back at him. Ryan tapped his badge casually. You forgot I'm a cop. Then he winked. Actually winked at me. I walked out of that mall feeling completely messed up in the head. The entire drive home, I kept replaying the conversation over and over again. You're seriously beautiful, you know that? No man had ever looked at me the way Ryan Miller did. There was confidence in his eyes. Attraction. Control. And the worst part? I liked it. More than I wanted to admit. That night I lay in bed staring at my ceiling for hours. I kept imagining his voice, his smirk, the way he looked at me like he already knew the truth before I even opened my mouth. I told myself to forget about him. He was just some random cop. A gay cop, apparently. And I was never going to see him again anyway. But over the next few days, he stayed inside my mind constantly. While editing videos on my laptop, I'd suddenly remember his smile. While showering, I'd think about his hands. At night, I'd catch myself imagining what it would feel like if he touched me. Every single time those thoughts appeared, I tried pushing them away. But they kept coming back stronger. Because deep inside, I knew the truth. The attention he gave me didn't scare me nearly as much as how badly I wanted more of it. For the next few days, I tried forcing myself to forget Officer Ryan Miller. I focused on work, stayed inside my apartment, ignored my thoughts, and convinced myself the whole thing at the mall meant nothing. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face again. That confident smirk. Those intense eyes staring at me like he already knew every secret I was hiding. It irritated me how much space he occupied in my head. By Thursday evening, I needed a distraction. So I drove outside Dallas to a truck stop near the highway to meet my friend Marcus. He was in his mid-40s, rough-looking, funny as hell, and had been helping me with transportation jobs and deliveries for almost a year. Sometimes I paid him to move equipment for clients. Sometimes we just sat around talking for hours. Marcus was one of the few people I actually trusted. The truck stop was crowded with massive 18-wheelers, loud engines, tired drivers, and yellow lights glowing across the parking lot. The smell of gasoline and coffee filled the night air as I parked beside Marcus's truck. He climbed down from the driver's seat grinning. Well, look who finally decided to leave his apartment, he laughed. Shut up, I said, smiling slightly. Marcus pulled me into a quick side hug before handing me a coffee. You look stressed. Long week. Or maybe you finally met someone. I nearly choked on my drink. Marcus laughed harder. Damn. I was joking. I rolled my eyes and followed him toward the truck stand area. We spent almost an hour talking business stuff, checking delivery schedules, and moving boxes around the storage section near the back lot. But honestly, my mind wasn't fully there. Every now and then, Ryan's face appeared in my thoughts again. At one point Marcus noticed how distracted I looked. You sure you're okay? Yeah. You keep staring into space. Just tired. Marcus gave me a suspicious look but didn't push further. Later, while organizing paperwork inside the truck cabin, Marcus leaned over my shoulder to point at something on the dashboard. From outside, I guess it probably looked more intimate than it actually was. Especially at night. Especially from a distance. After another 30 minutes, I finally decided to leave. Marcus fist bumped me before climbing back into his truck. "Drive safe, pretty boy." "Don't call me that. You literally look like a male model." "Accept reality." I laughed and got into my car. The highway back toward Dallas was mostly empty. Dark sky above me. Music playing quietly. My hands relaxed on the steering wheel. For the first time all week, I actually felt calm. Then flashing red and blue lights exploded behind me. My stomach dropped instantly. "No way," I whispered. I pulled over to the side of the road, heart already racing before the officer even stepped out. Deep down, I somehow knew. And a few seconds later, I was proven right. Officer Ryan Miller stepped out of the police SUV and slowly walked toward my window. Even under the highway lights, he looked unfairly attractive. Tall. Broad. Calm as ever. But tonight there was something colder in his expression. I rolled down the window slowly. Ryan leaned slightly toward the car. "Well," he said quietly. "Look who we have here." I forced myself to stay calm. "Did I do something wrong, officer?" His eyes locked onto mine. "What were you doing at that truck stop?" There it was. Straight to the point. "Just work stuff," I answered quickly. "MHM. It's true." Ryan rested one arm against the window frame casually. "Funny." "What?" "You don't look very convincing when you lie." I felt irritation rising inside me. Mostly because he was right. It was business, I repeated. With an older truck driver? I frowned immediately. "Why do you care?" Ryan's jaw tightened slightly. I asked the questions first. I crossed my arms. And I answered. For a moment neither of us spoke. The highway lights flashed across his face while cars passed in the distance. Then Ryan sighed softly. "Step out of the vehicle, Ethan." "What?" "Routine search." I stared at him. "Seriously? You got a problem with that?" His tone stayed calm, but I could feel the tension underneath it. Annoyed, I shoved the door open and stepped outside. The night air felt colder now. Ryan moved behind me professionally while beginning the search. His hands brushed against my sides, my pockets, my waist. And every single touch made my pulse jump. I hated how aware of him I was. "Arms out," he said quietly. I obeyed. His hands moved lower. By then I was already nervous for an entirely different reason. Because earlier at the truck stop, I had made a stupid decision. A very stupid one. And suddenly I realized exactly how bad this situation could become. Ryan noticed my body tense immediately. His eyes narrowed slightly. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." "You're shaking." "I'm not." "You are." I swallowed hard and looked away. Ryan's hands moved near my lower back, then paused suddenly. The silence that followed felt terrifying. Very slowly, Ryan looked down toward the back of my jeans. Then back up at me. His expression changed instantly. Not angry. Not surprised. Almost amused. My entire face burned with humiliation because I knew exactly what he had noticed. The stains. Tiny marks against the dark fabric. Proof. Real proof. For a few horrible seconds, neither of us said anything. I wanted the earth to open beneath me. Ryan stepped closer, lowering his voice almost to a whisper. "So," he murmured. "This is the straight guy who rejected me?" I couldn't even breathe properly. Heat rushed across my face as I stared at the pavement. No words came out. Ryan let out a quiet laugh under his breath. Not cruel. But definitely satisfied. "That's what I thought," he said softly. I felt completely exposed standing there beside the highway. Every lie I had told him suddenly looked pathetic. Ryan tilted his head slightly, studying me carefully. "You want to tell me the truth now?" I stayed silent. Partly because I was embarrassed. Partly because hearing him talk like that was affecting me way more than it should have. Ryan stepped even closer until I could smell his cologne mixed with the night air. "You know what's interesting?" he said quietly. "I think you wanted me to find out." My heartbeat slammed against my chest. "That's not true." "No?" He looked directly into my eyes now. "Then why do you look disappointed instead of angry?" I opened my mouth but couldn't answer. Because honestly, I didn't know. All I knew was that standing that close to him felt dangerous in the best possible way. The tension between us became almost unbearable. Ryan's gaze slowly moved across my face again before he spoke one more time. "You've been lying since the moment we met, Ethan." His voice stayed calm. Controlled. "But those eyes of yours?" He smirked faintly. "They tell me a completely different story." I stood there beside the highway, unable to look Ryan in the eyes. The flashing police lights painted red and blue shadows across the road while my heart pounded harder every second. I felt trapped. Not physically. Emotionally. Ryan stayed close to me, calm as ever, while I struggled to even breathe normally. The embarrassment burning through my body was unbearable. Every lie I had told him had completely fallen apart in a matter of seconds. And somehow the worst part wasn't getting caught. The worst part was how badly I still wanted him looking at me that way. Ryan crossed his arms slowly and leaned against the side of my car. "Well," he said quietly, "now I've got proof you lied to me." I swallowed hard. "Ryan." "That's Officer Miller on duty," he corrected teasingly. I closed my eyes for a second, already imagining the disaster this could become. My brain instantly jumped to the worst possibility. Arrest. Humiliation. Exposure. What if he actually reported me for something? What if he told other officers? What if this somehow ruined my life? Anxiety tightened in my chest so hard I could barely think. Ryan noticed immediately. His expression softened slightly, but the teasing look in his eyes remained. Then he asked the question that made my stomach flip completely. "So tell me something, Ethan," he said slowly. "Should I take you to jail, or are you coming with me?" I stared at him in shock. For a second I genuinely couldn't tell if he was serious. "You're joking, right?" Ryan smirked. "Maybe." I let out a nervous breath and finally realized something important. He wasn't threatening me. He was flirting with me. Even now. Especially now. That realization somehow made everything even more intense. Ryan stepped closer again until barely any space remained between us. "You know," he murmured, "I had a feeling about you the second I saw you at the mall." I looked away quickly. "You don't even know me." "I know enough." "You don't." "I know you couldn't stop staring at me either." That hit harder than I expected because it was true. I had noticed every detail about him from the moment we met. The problem was that hearing him say it out loud made it real. Ryan tilted his head slightly, studying my face. "I'm gay too, Ethan." The words were simple. Direct. But hearing them made something inside me crack open. No more guessing. No more pretending not to understand what was happening between us. Ryan looked at me with complete honesty now. "And honestly," he continued softly, "I've wanted you since the first day at that mall." My chest tightened painfully. Nobody had ever admitted wanting me like that before. Not openly. Not confidently. Not without shame. I didn't know how to respond. Years of hiding had trained me to deny everything automatically. Even now, part of me wanted to lie again. To escape. To pretend none of this was real. But Ryan kept looking at me so patiently that eventually the truth slipped out before I could stop it. I lied because I was scared. My voice came out quieter than I expected. Ryan's expression changed instantly. All the teasing disappeared from his face. "You were scared?" he asked gently. I nodded slowly. "You have no idea what it's like pretending your whole life," I admitted. "Every conversation feels fake. Every relationship feels fake. You start hiding so much that eventually you don't even know who you really are anymore." Ryan stayed silent while listening carefully. And somehow that made me keep talking. "I spent years making sure nobody could figure me out," I whispered. "Then you show up one day and look at me like you already know." Ryan's eyes softened completely now. "I do know," he said quietly. I looked up at him. "Because I spent years hiding too." Something about hearing that from a man like him felt surreal. A police officer. Confident. Masculine. Strong. He didn't look like someone who ever struggled with fear. But the sadness in his eyes told me otherwise. Ryan sighed softly before speaking again. "You think I don't understand what it's like pretending to be someone else?" he asked. "I built an entire career acting tougher than everyone around me because I knew what people would say if they found out." For the first time since meeting him, I saw something vulnerable beneath his confidence. And suddenly I didn't feel so alone anymore. The tension between us slowly changed after that. It stopped feeling dangerous. It started feeling intimate. Ryan moved closer carefully, giving me enough space to pull away if I wanted to. But I didn't pull away. Not this time. "You're safe with me," he said softly. 3 simple words. Yet hearing them nearly destroyed me emotionally. Because nobody had ever said that to me before. Not like they truly meant it. Ryan looked toward the highway for a second before glancing back at me. "My shift ends in 20 minutes, he said casually. I blinked. "Okay." He smirked slightly. "And I'm definitely not taking you to jail." I laughed nervously for the first time all night. "Good. But," he continued, "you are coming with me." The way he said it made warmth spread through my chest again. I hesitated for maybe 2 seconds before nodding slowly. Ryan smiled in victory like he already knew my answer. An hour later, I was sitting inside his apartment wondering how my entire life had changed so quickly. Ryan lived in a quiet building near downtown Dallas. His place surprised me immediately. I expected something cold and messy from a cop living alone. Instead, it felt warm. Comfortable. Soft lighting. Dark furniture. Music playing quietly somewhere in the background. It actually felt like him. Ryan tossed me a beer from the kitchen while removing his duty belt and holster. Watching him finally relax outside the uniform did dangerous things to my brain. He noticed me staring and smirked. "You okay over there?" "Yeah," I lied immediately. Ryan laughed softly. "You're still terrible at lying." I rolled my eyes and took a sip of beer. For the next hour, we sat on his couch talking about everything. Real conversations. Not fake ones. Not guarded ones. I told him about my online work, my lonely apartment, the pressure from my family, and how exhausting it felt constantly pretending to be straight. Ryan listened carefully the entire time. Then he told me about his own life. How he spent years hiding inside work. How relationships never lasted because he kept people at a distance. How lonely nights became normal after a while. The more we talked, the more relaxed I became. And honestly, it scared me a little. Because I had never felt this comfortable around another man before. At one point Ryan moved slightly closer beside me on the couch. Not enough to pressure me. Just enough for me to feel his warmth. "You know something?" he murmured. "What?" "You're even prettier when you stop pretending." My face heated instantly. Ryan smiled softly after seeing my reaction. God. I was completely doomed around this man. The room became quieter after that. The air between us heavier. Charged. I looked down at my beer while trying to steady my breathing, but then I felt Ryan's fingers gently touch my hand. Slowly. Carefully. Giving me every chance to move away. Instead, I let him hold it. And the second our fingers intertwined, something inside me finally relaxed for the first time in years. Because deep down, I realized I wasn't scared of Ryan anymore. I was scared of how badly I already wanted him. That night at Ryan's apartment changed something inside me forever. At first, we stayed on the couch talking quietly while the city lights glowed through the windows behind us. The beers on the table slowly became empty, but neither of us cared anymore. Hours passed without either of us noticing. For once in my life, I wasn't pretending to be someone else. And somehow, Ryan made that feel easy. Every time he looked at me, I felt wanted in a way I had never experienced before. Not judged. Not hidden. Not temporary. Wanted. At some point, the conversation became quieter. Softer. Ryan's fingers were still intertwined with mine when he finally looked down at my lips for the first time. The tension between us had been building since the mall. Now it was impossible to ignore. "You're thinking too much again," he murmured. I laughed nervously. "Can you blame me?" "A little." I looked at him carefully. "You really do this to everyone?" Ryan smirked slightly. "No." "Then why me?" His expression changed instantly. Because this time, his answer was serious. "Because from the moment I saw you," he said quietly, "I couldn't stop thinking about you either." My chest tightened. Ryan moved closer slowly, giving me every chance to stop him. But I didn't want to stop him. Not anymore. When he kissed me for the first time, it wasn't rushed or aggressive like I imagined it would be. It was slow. Careful. Almost protective. And somehow that made it hit even harder emotionally. I had kissed people before. But never like this. Never while feeling completely seen. Ryan's hand gently touched my face while he kissed me again, and I swear something inside me nearly broke apart. Years of loneliness, fear, pretending, all of it suddenly felt heavier than ever. Because now I understood what I had been missing. That night became more than physical attraction. Much more. Ryan treated me with a tenderness I wasn't prepared for. Every touch felt patient. Every kiss felt meaningful. There was desire between us, obviously, but there was also comfort. Safety. For the first time in my life, being close to another man didn't fill me with panic afterward. Instead, I felt calm. Later that night, I lay beside him in bed staring at the ceiling while his arm rested around my waist. The room was dark except for the faint city lights coming through the curtains. Ryan traced his fingers softly across my skin. "You okay?" he asked quietly. I nodded slowly. Then I admitted something I had never said out loud before. I've never felt this accepted by anyone. Ryan went silent for a second. When I looked at him, there was real emotion in his eyes. He pulled me slightly closer against him. "You deserve to feel accepted, Ethan," he whispered. "You always did." That nearly destroyed me emotionally. Because deep down, I had spent years believing maybe I didn't. Ryan kissed my forehead gently before speaking again. "And just so we're clear," he murmured, "I'm not looking for temporary fun." I blinked. "What?" "I mean you." His voice stayed calm and honest. "I want something real." My heart started pounding again. "Ryan." "I'm serious," he said quietly. "I've had enough meaningless relationships. If I'm letting someone this close to me, it's because they matter." Nobody had ever talked to me like that before. I didn't even know how to respond. So instead, I kissed him again. And this time, Ryan smiled against my lips like he already understood my answer. Over the next few weeks, my entire routine slowly changed. Without realizing it, Ryan became part of my everyday life. Sometimes after work he'd pick me up in his truck late at night, and we'd drive around Dallas for hours with music playing softly while we talked about everything and nothing at the same time. Other nights we'd stop at tiny roadside diners after his shift ended. Ryan always ordered coffee no matter how late it was, and somehow every waitress flirted with him. I used to get jealous watching it happen. Ryan noticed immediately. "You know they can tell I'm looking at you instead of them, right?" he teased once. I nearly choked on my fries. He laughed so hard the entire diner looked at us. And honestly, I didn't even care anymore. That was the strange thing about Ryan. The more time I spent with him, the less afraid I became. At his apartment, I stopped hiding pieces of myself. I stopped lowering my voice whenever conversations became personal. I stopped acting distant whenever he touched me. And slowly, outside his apartment, I stopped pretending too. Not completely, but enough to finally breathe. One evening we were walking together through downtown Dallas after dinner. The streets were crowded with people, lights, music, cars, laughter everywhere around us. Normally in public, I always kept distance between myself and any man I liked. Years of fear trained me to do that automatically. But Ryan suddenly brushed his hand lightly against mine while we walked. Just a small touch. Yet my entire body froze. Ryan noticed immediately and slowed down. "You okay?" he asked softly. I looked around nervously at all the strangers passing us. Then I looked back at him. Ryan didn't pressure me. Didn't ask for anything. He simply waited. And for the first time in my life, I got tired of being afraid. Slowly, my fingers moved toward his. Then I held his hand. Right there in public. My chest tightened so hard I thought I might cry. Nobody screamed. Nobody pointed. Nobody cared. The world kept moving normally around us while Ryan squeezed my hand gently and smiled at me like I had just done something incredibly brave. Maybe I had. In that moment, I realized something important. For the first time in my life, I stopped pretending. Ryan leaned down slightly while we continued walking together. "Proud of you," he whispered. I smiled so hard my face hurt. Weeks later, I was practically living at his apartment half the time. My clothes were everywhere. My coffee mug somehow became his favorite one. And every night I fell asleep beside him feeling safer than I ever had before. One rainy evening, Ryan and I were sitting on his couch watching television when he suddenly muted it and looked at me seriously. "What?" I asked. He smiled softly. "I've been wanting to ask you something." My heartbeat immediately sped up. Ryan reached for my hand. "Will you officially be my boyfriend?" I stared at him for a second, almost unable to process the question. Boyfriend. Such a simple word. Yet hearing it felt unreal after spending so many years convincing myself I could never have something real with another man. I smiled before answering quietly. "Yeah. I will." Ryan kissed me instantly after that, and I could actually feel him smiling against my lips. Warmth spread through my entire chest. Not fear. Not shame. Just happiness. Real happiness. And as I sat there in the arms of the man who had completely changed my life, I realized something almost funny. The cop I was terrified of becoming close to became the man I never wanted to lose. Red Heart. If you enjoyed this story, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Red Heart. How did you feel about Ethan and Ryan's relationship? Don't forget to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional gay love stories. Your support truly means a lot to us. Thank you for watching.